Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on the time zone that you are in. Welcome to this episode of BrandCraft. I am your host, Ann Wynn, owner and chief amplifier of Amplified Marketing, where we work with purpose driven brands to grow with smart, effective, and fun marketing. I started BrandCraft last year. I had to think about it. We are almost in the middle of 2025 already. Last year because I work with a lot of small teams, small but mighty teams, whether you're one person or just a lean crew doing really great, amazing, kick ass things for their brands. And so I wanted this opportunity to be able to feature all these wonderful teams or people doing amazing things. And that's how BrandCraft came to being. So if you are interested in being a guest on BrandCraft, I am currently booking for August and beyond of this year. So please go to bit.ly/brandcraft-guest to complete your information and choose your show date. I'd love to feature you and or your small team, small but mighty team with big ideas and big results. And today's guest is definitely someone with amazing results for her individual personal brand. And I cannot wait to bring her on and talk to you about what she's doing and how she's finding success through LinkedIn and the content for her personal brand. So Lidia Varesco-Racoma of Lidia Varesco Design in Chicago, one of my favorite cities, empowers organizations to make a change through strategic branding and marketing design. Lidia is also a blogger, speaker, and coach, and she leads branding, design, and creative marketing workshops for nonprofits, associations, and social entrepreneurs. So if you're a nonprofit or an association or social entrepreneur, listen up. And then Lidia Varesco Design is a certified woman-owned business and celebrates 25 years in business in November of this year. That is an amazing milestone, and congratulations, Lidia. And we will definitely talk a little bit more about how you have been successful for almost a quarter of a century. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest. Hello, Lidia.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Anne. I'm so
Oh,
excited to be
absolutely.
here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. And so, just a quick background, Lydia and I connected because of the Content Marketing World Slack channel. Shout out to Content Marketing World.
Yep.
And we were just on there talking, and I shared about BrandCraft, and she said, "Hey, I'm interested in being a guest," and I completed her information. But what really blew me away was when you and I had that one on one with each other and found that we were kindred spirits, essentially, right? Working
Yep.
with purpose driven brands and nonprofits. And the way we think about and the way we connect with our community is very similar. And so I was like, oh, I definitely have to feature Lydia because, we are definitely kindred souls. So,
Oh, totally.
and if you would like to connect with Lydia yourself, please do so on LinkedIn. This is her personal profile. And then, of course, you can get social with her design firm on Facebook or Instagram, and that's their handle at LSV Design. So let's get started with our conversation about personal branding. It's such a buzzword these days. And I always tell people it's really about your reputation, right? Because, in the old school days before we had all the socials, it was really about your reputation. And so now, people hear personal brand and personal branding and they kind of freak out a little bit because they're like, what exactly does that mean? And so I'd love to really hear more about what that means to you, what it means in LinkedIn. And if you're tuning in, please drop comments about what personal branding means to you.
Yes, definitely. So, like you said, Anne, I feel like it's really become this buzzword. And, even my husband and I were talking about it today. And so everybody's kind of talking about it. But I feel like sort of the real meaning of it can get lost. What I think about personal branding is really, how you're showing up. For example, we're talking about LinkedIn today. How are you showing up on LinkedIn? And how are you really being genuine and
Mm-hmm.
showing your true self? And that's something that is really important to me. And I've always kind of felt that sort of drives my presence in general, wherever I am, whether I'm on LinkedIn, whether I'm creating a video, whether I'm at a networking event. I really feel like I want to be myself. I want to bring my whole self, to these places. And so I've really just kind of translated that as well into this, social presence. And for me, it's really about, like I said, being genuine, being who I am, um, being very like welcoming and supportive. That's a really big thing for me for part of my personal brand. Part of it is, I'm a mom, I have two kids in elementary school. But I also kind of feel like I have that same, sort of supportive feeling about my clients, my friends, my colleagues. Like, I want them to succeed too. Just like with my kids, I want to do what I can to help them succeed. I feel the same way with the people in my network. So I really feel like that sort of drives my personal brand is being myself. How can I help? Kind of showing up with,
Yeah.
that attitude of like, how can I help today?
Yeah, absolutely. And and just in speaking with you, and you and I've not even met in person yet, but just looking at your content and speaking with you, I can absolutely feel this, right? Like you're very, very genuine, and that you really want people to trust you, and I absolutely appreciate that. And so your brand, in essence, really, or your values define your brand. Actually, it's your values of being a resource, of being helpful, of being a valuable connection to others and helping others is helps to define your personal brand. Would you say that this is true?
Yes, definitely. And I feel like that is really a reason why I ended up working in the nonprofit sector is really just that feeling of, being of service, of supporting communities, um, giving voice to people that, aren't usually given the voice. Like, I really feel like that is part of my internal values. And that's something that really extended into my business. And I guess being like sometimes I'm a one woman show and obviously named after my business. So really my business is me. And so there is going to be that overlap of values, but that really drives, what I do is I feel like I've always kind of had that in me. Even when I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher, I had the chalkboard, so I feel like I've always kind of had that in me where I want to somehow help people, guide them, give them resources, sometimes even just being that cheerleader for them, like, hey, you got this.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think it's valuable, even if it's just like you said, just a quick, hey, you got it, you can do it, like a quick word of
Yeah.
engagement. So let's talk about how that translate into like your content and your posts,
Yes.
right? You talked about your values and your personal brand is truly your business brand and vice versa, because you are a solopreneur, and many of us find that to be the case, because for a
Mhm.
very long time I was really just focused on my personal brand. I really didn't do anything under the amplified marketing name. And so I absolutely understand that. So I'd love for you to talk us through kind of what you choose to share, and
Mhm.
from nonprofit branding tips to just other insights.
Yeah, definitely. So, like you mentioned, a lot of it is the nonprofit branding tips. So, kind of like, how do I do this? How do I overcome these challenges? How can I more effectively brand and market my organization? A lot of it is that type of content. And I will say a lot of it is driven by the talks that I do. So I like whenever I get questions in the Q&A and the chat, I always save those. I jot them down. I save them because they're gold. They're really,
Oh my
these are
gosh,
the pain
yes.
points. These are the things that people are struggling with. And I will use that content to either do like a Q&A video or do a blog or even like, webinars. I've even created conference sessions, based around these pain points that I've observed. So that's a big deal. It's really kind of like seeing, what are people talking about? What do they need? And how can I help them, through my experience? Like you said, I've been doing this now. I coming up on 25 years in November, but I've been doing it even longer than that, just not for my own business. So I've been through a lot of different scenarios and situations, and can kind of help navigate again, kind of be that guide for my audience. So that's a big part of it. And again, like, making it actionable. That's
Yeah,
like a really big deal for
for
me.
sure.
Um, especially in my talks too. It's like, I'm not going to give you a bunch of information that you're not going to know what to do with. Like, I want you to take this and do something with it,
Just bullet points is not valuable, right? Like
Yes,
sharing the examples and
yes,
actionable tips and items is more valuable.
yes.
Yeah.
And things that apply to maybe a smaller organization. Not everybody has the huge budget for a complete brand overhaul, but they can DIY aspects of it, and I love to help in that sense. So yes, a lot of it's like the tips, the best practices, actionable advice, and then resources. Like, love sharing resources. That was one thing when I saw your LinkedIn profile and you were like, I am a connector. I was like, oh my gosh, girl, so am I. Like, I think we can connect on that. But yeah, like, however I can provide resources for organizations, or make connections, or like, hey, do you need a grant writer? Do you need someone to help you with strategic planning? Like, I can make referrals for you. Like, that I feel like is really a big deal for me. It's really, if I can't personally provide the support, I can help you find it. So that's a big deal. And then I also, of course, do some of the promotion. Like, of course, we're going to be promoting your
Yeah.
businesses
Yeah.
at some point.
Yes.
So I'll promote my speaking gigs, my services, my products, but I don't allow that to kind of drive my content. Like, I feel like I, of course, want to share those things, but I don't want it to be like sales all day long.
Absolutely. And I think that's why one of the reasons you and I click so much too is that we are truly educators at heart, right? Wanting to make sure that we're sharing things that are educational and would be helpful. What you shared about how you come up with different posts and contents was, I don't know why, for a minute, it was like a light bulb moment for me. This is something I advise people all the time, but thinking about my own practice. And then again, if you're a solopreneur or a small team entrepreneur with a small team, that's a great way to think about it, right? If you're speaking, what are they asking you? What are the questions that you get over and over? And that's great content that you can share to really show your subject matter expertise as well. So thank you for that idea. It's a wonderful idea. So if you're consultants out there, take heed, right?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
speaking of speaking, I do want to share this webinar that Lydia will be facilitating on behalf of Bloomerang that's happening tomorrow. And so, if you are a nonprofit, this is a wonderful way to learn how to elevate your brand, because many nonprofits, as we know, you and I know, because we work with them, they struggle with this or challenged with this. And it is a rather competitive space, right, to look for sponsors and supporters and things like that. And so this would be a wonderful webinar for nonprofits to drop in on. Now, will it be recorded? So if they perhaps like registered and weren't able to attend, would they still get that resource?
They will, yes.
Oh,
Bloomerang will record it. So if you can't make it tomorrow, you'll be able to access it. I will be sharing lots of resources. Again, that's just what I do. Love
yes.
to do that. So yeah, even if you can't attend, you'll see the recording, you'll get the resources afterwards.
Yep, absolutely. And I encourage you to connect with Lydia right away. I've tagged her in the post for this episode, so easy to find her on LinkedIn. But that's how I found out about this Bloomerang webinar, was because she had shared it. But to your point about not being so salesy or constantly promoting yourself, but still, you can still pepper it in, right? And so people ask me often, well, how can I do that? How often can I do that? And there's no hard and fast rule. It's just really kind of, you already know, you've got to share more to really get back more. And so I absolutely appreciate you saying that too, because oftentimes people are challenged with, well, if I continue to just educate, how would I promote myself? But educating people is promoting you, right?
Yes.
It's promoting your brand because it's showing what you know. So you're doing it in not a salesy, smarmy way, like you said. So it's absolutely a valuable practice. We kind of segued into this a little bit already, right? The role of generosity in building a personal brand. And so I wanted you to share a little bit of, maybe if you have some examples or highlight how you include sharing resources, connecting others, becoming a community builder. Because in our conversation, you and I talked about how valuable it is to us to be able to connect folks that may not have anything to do with us, but that makes us feel really great. But in the long run, it helps our brand.
Yes, definitely. I think that, like I've mentioned a couple times, like I love discovering things. I love doing research. I mean, it's kind of ironic. I'm a creative, but I love research. So I'm always looking things up.
You're a unicorn, Lydia. You're a unicorn.
Yes, I guess I am. My daughter would say that about me, I'm sure. But yeah, like just this morning, I found this nonprofit report. I was like, oh, great. I have to share this. I have to pull some stats from here. So I feel like, part of it is just like, it's really innate in me. But I think most people have that generous spirit. It's just maybe not really knowing kind of how to implement that. So I feel like the best way is really like, what are you passionate about? What do you really love? And kind of share that, whatever you're really passionate about. Like just recently, I think it was maybe like a week or two ago, it was National Library Week. And I love the library. I love books. Librarians have been amazing influences in my children's lives. So that meant a lot to me. So that week I really I shared a lot of posts from the ALA. I shared, some examples of like my book stack, what me and my kids are reading and like my passion for the life. So I really feel like that's a good place to start if you're kind of unsure of like, how do I kind of bring across this generosity? It's really, I think, just kind of what you're passionate about. Um, and then also just kind of like, don't be afraid to talk about your life and what's going on. And I feel like those are the things that truly resonate. Like when I have a friend slash colleague, and she will sometimes post about her home office. And like those are the posts where I was like, yeah, I get it, like something about like she's got her laundry basket or something. So it's like really like those posts where you're real, I mean, within reason, it's still
Yeah.
business, but I think that's what really, people start to connect with those. And that is a form of generosity because that person is being generous enough to kind of, you know, go out of that safe space and kind of go out on a limb and be like, hey, yeah, I work at home and here's my laundry basket right next to me. So, yeah, I think just kind of think about what are you really passionate about? What parts of your everyday life can you share? Because I feel like we always think that what we know is not a big deal. But then once you start talking to people, they're like, "Oh my gosh!" Like you said, you have that aha moment. I have those aha moments all the time, and it's just kind of a random thing that somebody said, and they probably were like, "Oh, that's no big deal." And to me, it was like an inspiration. So
Yeah.
don't think anything is no big deal. Share it.
Thank you for saying that. And I really appreciate you saying that too. Because in fact, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I hope they're viewing because I can't really see who's viewing right now on LinkedIn. But he and I were talking about how speaking, and we feel like, oh, it's the same old thing that we share. But there are people in the audience who go, oh, wow, this is really enlightening for us. And so
Yeah,
don't be afraid to continue to share those things, even though you think, oh, that's not really a big deal, right? And so I love that you
totally.
said and good reminders too, because while there are marketers or other professionals who may have been doing these things in their own industry for a long time, these aha moments are really good reminders as well. Like, oh yeah, I kind of
Yes.
forgot about that. I should really put that back into practice for myself. And so I appreciate you saying that for sure. Let's see. I think
Definitely.
we had a comment, and I apologize. LinkedIn user is all I have here, so I apologize for watching. Thank you. We appreciate it. This discussion resonates so much. Anne and Lydia, thank you both for your insights. Thank you for tuning in. And like I said, I was absolutely excited to have Lydia on talking about this because I was like, you're speaking my language, sister. You're speaking my
Yeah,
language.
I'm so happy to talk about this too because I feel like so many people are like, I don't know what to say on social media. What do I post? How do I talk about my business without being salesy? I feel like there's so many people have all these conflicts. And I really feel like, just bring it all down to, be yourself, be who you are, be genuine. And how can you, what can you bring to the table today? How can you help today?
Absolutely. And also in addition to really bringing value to the table and how you can be helpful, it's being consistent in how you
Yes.
show up too. And
Oh, yes.
being consistent doesn't mean like you have to post every single day. And I try to share this with people because you're right. Solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, business owners get all wrapped up in this. How do I find time to do this? How can I
Yes.
post every single day? Well, that's not what consistency means. So, share with us how you are consistently being visible and present, but you're not sitting on LinkedIn 24
Right.
hours a day, right? So what does that
No.
look like for you? And I'd love for you to share some tips and insights for others on how to show up like that consistently.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I will share like my little secret LinkedIn secret is like I sometimes log in when I'm like waiting to pick up my kids,
There you
like
go.
sitting at the bank. Like, why not? Right? You have like an extra 15 minutes, my son has a wrestling meet. Like those are the times I'm kind of like sneaking it in. So yeah, I also is like I'm not sitting on LinkedIn all day. I'm not spending my whole day creating content. You can find those small moments in your day, but you also need to have a system. So if you don't have a content calendar, today go and create your content calendar. I said I'm going to
Today is the
batch
day
you
to
with
start
stuff.
one.
So today, create your content calendar. If you don't have one, I have a template. I'm happy to share it with you. But create a simple strategy, and it can be very simple, and a content calendar, and that made a huge difference for me because now I knew, what I'm going to be posting about. I think I started out with sort of like, oh, on Mondays I'll post this, on Wednesdays I'll post this. I don't always do that, but I'm at least consistent with posting, content regularly.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the top tip is like have a simple content calendar, have a simple strategy with what you want to post, who your audience is, and why. Why are you posting? I think that's the key with branding, in general. We talk about who, what, and why. And it's the same thing with expressing your personal brand on LinkedIn. It's like, who are you talking to? What are you saying to them? And why should they care? So, kind of getting a handle on that, and then implementing a calendar, and that will make everything so much easier and consistent.
Absolutely. And so many people forget about like the why too. And also what something that I always share when I'm talking to other brands about what to post in content. It's not about you, it's not about me, right? But it's about the people that are in my
Yes.
community and what would be helpful to them. So it's not about you, it's about them. And I think
Yes.
considering that it really brings value to what you're sharing. And absolutely, how simple of a content calendar could someone just create, right? Because when we say those words, I think I see people's eyes just pop out and go, oh my God, what do you mean a content?
Yes.
So, convoluted and confusing and complicated, and it doesn't have to be. So how simple could it
Right.
possibly be? Would you give us an example?
Yes. And, like I said, I have a template I'm happy to share, but it could
Awesome.
be as simple as, the date, the channel you're posting on, the topic, and or the post copy. Like I choose to put the post copy in my calendar because I work with a VA who then goes and schedules it in Buffer for me. But even if you're doing it yourself, it's just kind of nice to have all the copy in one place.
Mhm.
Um, and that's really all you need. I mean, my calendar has, kind of categories. It has like image links, other various things to kind of
Yeah.
boost, the productivity of it. But really, you can start with, date, channel, topic, and then post copy, and that's all you really need. And the fact that it's visual, I think that's what helps people the most because when you look at it, you can see, oh my goodness, I haven't posted in a month. It's like
Yes,
glaringly
exactly.
obvious.
Oh, wait, that's not being consistent. By the way,
Yes.
folks, posting every so often, every once in a month is not consistency.
Yes, exactly. So that will help immediately, just that seeing it at a glance. And then if you do take it kind of a step further and you have like categories. So I have categories of like branding, speaking, work life, behind the scenes. These are all kind of the categories. So I sort of slot things in so that I'm not showing, a picture of my desk every day. That's like from time to time. And I'm not also posting about my events every day. So I feel like when you have those categories set up, then you kind of see again, like, do I have a good mix here? Like the funny thing is that I tend to not post enough of the kind of promotional content because I have fun with the more educational, asking questions. Like, I love asking people questions. Like, just last week, I did a post for Small Business Week, and I asked people, how many years in business have you been? And it was so fun to see everybody put like 17 years, 8 years, like, so I get excited about those kind of posts and I forget to do my promotional content.
It does help you though too, because you're getting engagement with those types of posts.
Yes.
And I saw your post and I chimed in, I congratulated
Thank
you and I
you.
saw how people were replying with the numbers of years that they had been in business. And that helps. That's engagement. And that,
Yes.
for those who are so just worried about the algorithm, that's what drives your content to be seen is engagement
Yep.
with those comments. And so that absolutely does help you because this is a very long game of building visibility, brand visibility, and
Yes.
building trust. And so you can't really build trust if you're constantly promotional and salesy. People turn you off and tune you
Yep.
out. I always liken it to if you know someone who talks about themselves all the time, what do you do when you see them coming? Or do you answer
Right.
their calls? No, you don't. And so I think what you're doing in practice with even almost forgetting to be promotional sometimes actually works for your brand. I know you've had some successes with people reaching
Yep.
out and going, hey, I really like what you're posting. I kind of want to work with you. Would you be able to share that
Yep.
example?
I did. I had just an example recently. I will say quite often, like when I go to in-person events, at least one person will say, "Oh my gosh, I love this thing you shared on LinkedIn," or "I saw that you posted this on LinkedIn. That's so cool." So that's awesome. Like to me, those are the analytics that mean more than when I'm looking at my analytics every month in LinkedIn. I mean, those are important to me, of course, because I do want to see what people are engaging with and keep up doing that type of content. But when
Mhm.
somebody walks up to you at an event and they're like, I love this thing that you posted, or thanks for sharing. Like that is the analytic. So, like I mentioned just recently, we had met at a networking event or like an association event, and I looked it up. It was in 2019. And so we were connected on LinkedIn, and she reached out and she said, "Hey, I've been following you, and I got to, kind of got to know you by following you on LinkedIn, and I was thinking maybe you can help me with this project." So we had a chat about her project, and I just thought, like, this is awesome. Like, it's working. This, like I said, this is means more to me than looking at numbers.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
So that's my biggest piece of advice to people is really like, yeah, do look at your numbers because you want to see what is working and do more of that, particular types of posts that are generating more content. But also look for these observations, kind of if people are saying things to you or pointing things out or saying, I really liked this, or that's really cool that you did this. Like put that on the top of your list, and make a
Yeah.
mental note of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. The data, the numbers are important, but they are not the end all be all. There are other things that come into play to consider what's successful. And that's a wonderful example, right? You met this person in person at an event and they had been following your content and came to realize, oh, she does know what she's talking about in this particular topic. She can help me. And that is
Right.
absolutely the way that personal branding works and how being, community minded and sharing information on LinkedIn absolutely works and across any platform too. I think we
Yeah.
focus so much on LinkedIn mostly because that's where business happens. But also, I wanted to take a step back, and I love the fact that you have categories on your content calendar. And for those
Mm-hmm.
of us who are in marketing, we always use the word content pillars, right? And so I think
Yep.
again that when we use buzzwords like that, other people go, "What? What are you talking about? It sounds so complicated." But really, that's all it is. It's categories. What do you want to talk about?
Yep.
pick out 3 to 5 categories that are part of what you want to talk about, and then go from there. And so that is a great way to reframe that because we
Yeah,
get so tied up in
absolutely.
our little buzzword world. Content pillars. We got to have content pillars.
Yes, I feel like people get intimidated, like you said, and then they also are like, well, what do I say? Well, once you have those categories, you can find so many different things to say. And even for me, like sometimes like a thought pops in my head and I'm like, oh, I got to post that. But then I look at my categories, because sometimes it's like it's just something that one of my kids like said or did that inspired something in me. And then I'm like, oh, I should share that. But then sometimes I think about it, and I'm like, wait a second, how can I maybe just like add to it and make it a little more meaningful rather than just like, oh, here's this like, inspiring thing my kid said, but make it more actionable. Like,
Yeah.
this is how I'm going to use that information, or this is how you could use that information, or has this happened to you? Or so I'm kind of trying to, even for myself, I'm constantly learning and sort of reframing things so that I'm not just throwing things out there. Because I do sometimes like, you take a picture of something and you're like, that's really cool, I want to share that. But sometimes it's nicer if it fits into a category and it makes more sense to people than just like a cool picture.
Absolutely. You've got to give it some context and then really have that conversation going. And you and I have been on LinkedIn long enough to have seen the evolution of it. When we first
Yes.
joined, it was all about just collecting contacts, if you will, right?
Yes.
There was a magical number you had to get to. And then it became like this recruiting, like really just great place for recruiters and people to find jobs. I personally have never really used it to find a job, but I guess I kind of do now because you and I both work for ourselves. And so we are
Right.
looking for jobs on LinkedIn. But I have absolutely appreciated the evolution of it becoming more personable and people
Yes.
being able to share a little more personal information, but still within limits, as you mentioned, right?
Yes.
As when you and I talked, I was like, I don't want to see, any kind of inappropriate photos on LinkedIn
Right.
or cat memes. I don't want to see cat memes on LinkedIn. So it has become a really great place to be. And when I hear people say, "Oh, it doesn't work for me," it's usually typically because they haven't really been on it consistently. They haven't
Mhm.
built a community, and then all of a sudden they have a need and think it can be a fast win. And
Right.
it doesn't happen that way. It's like we said, it's a long game.
It is truly a long game. And I feel like, that's just the nature of marketing,
It
branding.
is. It's a
It's,
marathon.
yes, it's really about just creating that framework,
Mhm.
that guide, for yourself and just doing it consistently. And that's when I started my business is when I really started to get into marketing because I'm a graphic designer and that's what my background was in graphic design. But then when I started my business, I was like, hey, I need to market my business. And I started to like really get into marketing and learn more about it. Now I'm doing marketing, with my clients. And I realized like it really is like you're not going to just put an ad out there and get all this business. It's really just kind of showing who you are, showing what you can do, and letting people come to you when it's the right time. And to be honest, I do the same thing. I just, a colleague of slash friend of mine posted, and she did a really nice post that was, content, um, but also, oh, I've done this with these kinds of clients. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, I'm going to keep this in mind, next time an RFP comes in,
Mhm.
like we can partner up. So it's really like I'm doing the same thing out on LinkedIn. I'm looking at who might I want to partner with on an RFP or a
Exactly.
project? Who might I want to refer to somebody? Or I know somebody's looking for a job in marketing and this person just posted that they have an open position. So I'm doing the same exact thing. And it's working for me in
Absolutely.
that sense too.
Yeah. No, I love it. And oh my gosh, this has been a great I could continue to have this conversation with you, but we are at the end of towards the end of our show. And to close out the show, I would love for you to share just one or two things that are simple, sustainable ways that we as solopreneurs or entrepreneurs with a small staff could really stay visible without like having burnout, because you can't be
Yeah.
on all the time.
Yes. So I would say create your content calendar and pick your 3 categories. Like we said, we don't have to call them
Content pillars.
content pillars. Just pick 3 categories that you want to, write about and talk about and discuss. That's the first thing. And then start to think about, your personal values and how you can best express those. And maybe it means making a list. I'm a big fan of like writing things down because it just sort of solidifies it for
Yeah.
me. But also you can go back to it. So maybe just write down like what are your top 10 values that run through your own life, your business, and kind of, pick like the top 3 and then sort of see how those can fit together with those categories. So for me, like one of my top values is really to help. I am that typical helper sort of, persona. So that is what I really do a lot of in my content. So, for other people, it may be a different type of value. But how can you really express those values in your content, within those 3 categories that you've chosen? I think that should be pretty easy to do.
No, that is a fantastic tip. And that is a great way to think about it, because you're right. So many people are like, what do I write about? What do I write about? And that there it is in a nutshell. That is a fantastic tip. Thank you so much.
Great. Glad to help.
Absolutely. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I've loved having you on the show. For everyone, please go check out lsvdesign.com. Connect with Lidia on LinkedIn, especially if you would like her template for the content calendar. That's a very generous offer that you shared. So thank you. And then don't forget to get social with her business on Facebook and IG at LSV Design. And then also one last plug there for your webinar tomorrow. If you're going to not constantly be plugging yourself, I will plug you. And also that's the other part too, is connecting with people and having other people help promote your things. I think that's more valuable than anything. Lidia, I have so much enjoyed this conversation today. I've had a lot of fun, and you have shared such wonderful, just great nuggets that can be used for not only for us, for solopreneurs and independent consultants, but for any brand. And just think of it, in terms of sharing these different stories or content in different categories. So I loved it. Thank you so much again for being on the show.
Thank you, Anne. I'm so thrilled that we connected and to be a guest on BrandCraft. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your week. And if you are catching the replay, love to hear any questions or comments. We'll make sure to get it back to Lidia. And one last comment here. Thanks, Rashda. Great conversation. Thank you for all the insights and tips. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you next month on BrandCraft. Stay tuned to my LinkedIn channel, and you'll hear all about my guests coming up in June.